Welcome, friends, and welcome back, friends, to the second week of our 2021 webinar series, Learning to Listen and Learning Through Listening. I am Uma Soman. I'm a teacher of the deaf. I'm the co-founder and director of professional development for Listening Together. I am joined today by Unedited, our board member, who is a parent of a bilateral cochlear implant user and helps us with our parent empowerment programs. And our co-founder, board member, director of parent empowerment, Aladini, is unable to join us today, but will be available to answer questions as they come up via email or WhatsApp at a later time. All right, I see people are joining us, and many of you I see are familiar names. So very quickly, just a summary of what Listening Together does. We empower parents, train professionals, and engage with communities around the world to transform the lives of children who are deaf and hard of hearing. We envision a world where children can achieve their true potential, their best potential, their highest potential, without being constrained by where they live and what their family can afford. Listening Together is a non-profit organization. We are not associated with any implant companies or hearing loss related associations, and are fully funded by donations. And we want to thank the Butte Creek Foundation for supporting this webinar series. I have just now turned on the captioning. I hope you can see that. Give me a thumbs up if you can, or type in chat and tell me that yes, you can see the captioning. You might have to click on the CC button to see it, but I hope it is visible to you. Is it somebody? Anybody? Yes. Okay, good. Excellent. Very quickly, Listening Together programs are over 3 categories. We provide programs that are geared towards parents, and these are individual as well as group programs. We provide programs that are geared towards professionals, and these are trainings, mentoring for LSLS certification, as well as program consultation. And we provide programs that are created with the intention to create awareness. So these are our monthly webinars, our storybook, Stories of Maya and Sid, and more resources on our website that are related to education, rehabilitation, lesson planning, language sampling, etc. So please do check it out. What we want to do is in 2021, we want to focus on increasing access to information. So this is what our webinars are for. This is what the resources on our website are for. We want to build capacity. So we want to strengthen and grow family capacities, professional capacities at the individual as well as program levels. And we want to foster leadership. We know that this is a field where a lot of change, a lot of progress is required. And that's not going to happen until all of us work together. We believe that every person at every different level can become a leader and can create change. So we actively work to foster family leadership. We actively work to foster professional leadership. And we see all of you attending today as change makers and leaders. So I want to hear a little bit about you, from you. So let me launch the poll and please respond and tell us who you are, what your first language is, and if this is your first Listening Together webinar, and the type of device you are joining us from. Okay, people are voting. I'll give it a few more seconds. Please share your responses. All right. I'm looking for a couple more responses. Perfect. 80%. That's always my goal for a group representation. So we have multiple professionals, parents, even some students joining us today with home languages or first languages being mostly English, Hindi, and Marathi. We have all returning folks, so that's exciting. I'm really glad that you all are here today. And I'm assuming that you all are here because you all attended last week. If you are somebody who attended last week, go ahead and share in the chat what is something you remember from last week, or something that stayed with you, you kept thinking about it, or something that you actually tried to do based on last week's session. And a majority are joining again from their mobile phone, and I hope that you can connect with us and you can see what's on the screen. So I am waiting for some answers in the chat. Give me a quick sense of what is something you remembered from last week that you have tried to do or thought more about. Parents, professionals, students, family members, everybody is welcome to share. I'm practicing my wait time skills, and I will wait to get some comments from you. We have a comment that says, I like the idea of building capacity at all levels. Absolutely. We think that's the only way real sustainable change will happen. That is not focused on just one or two people, but a sea of change. All right, still waiting for some responses. There are no wrong answers, just what you learned. Waiting. Perfect, here comes some responses. Collaborating with professionals and partnering with all team members. Absolutely. I hope that is something you got a chance to work on. We have another response that says, we learned who are in the team. Yes, definitely. And today we are going to talk more about that. Anyone else? All right, keep typing your answers. If you have a comment, please put it in the chat. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. Please type in the Q&A. Sorry, I got confused. All right, today's topic is intervention for auditory skills development. I want to start by defining what I mean by intervention. Intervention is any action taken to change the course of what is. So if you're going in this way and you take an action to change, then that is intervention. So a child is born with profound hearing loss. That is one path, and the child gets a cochlear implant, and that changes how the child learns to listen. That is an intervention. Child has a hearing aid and child is learning to listen by using that hearing aid. Any activities, any efforts, any actions done to help the child learn to listen is an intervention. So by intervention, I don't mean just being in therapy, being at school and doing auditory activities. That is one small part of auditory skills development. Okay. So I just want to start out by saying that. Take a second and read last week's key concepts. If you have any questions or any doubts about these 5 points, please put it in the Q&A. I want to make sure that this information is clear before we move forward. If everything is clear, give me a thumbs up in the chat. Or give me a raise hand in the just in the Zoom program. It's like, give me a high five. That's your raise hand if this information is clear. All right, I'm getting some high fives. I like that. Okay, I'm going to make raise hand a high five feature. Very good. Seriously though, if there are any questions, please put them in the Q&A. I'd be happy to answer them. I'm going to do a very quick review. We talked about hearing loss management, and that is identification and diagnosis by 3 months, using hearing technology, consistent programming and maintenance of technology, and family-centered intervention that is focused on supporting the language of the home and the heart, as well as the family's desired outcomes, is what we think of as being part of hearing loss management. I see a question that's come up and I'm going to answer that in just a bit. Perfect. So keep the questions coming in. We talked at the end of last week's session that hearing technology is a tool. Just because you wear a hearing aid or you get a cochlear implant particularly, it doesn't mean you know or can benefit from it the best unless you practice wearing it, practice using it, practice listening with it. So when we think about intervention, this is what I said last week, we are focused on consistent device usage, creating a need to listen, and giving the child something meaningful to listen to. So let's talk more about that today. These are the key concepts for this week. I'm going to read them out loud. And if you have any questions or comments or thoughts about it, type it in the chat, or if you have a question, put it in the Q&A. Through early and consistent use of hearing technology, children can learn to listen and learn through listening. Children progress through stages of auditory development. Understanding and learning through listening depends on a child's language knowledge. So there is a link between listening and language. Intentional, routine-based activities can help develop auditory development. And periodic assessment, evaluation of auditory skills are essential for planning and implementing intervention. Okay, this is what we're going to be talking about. But before we get there, I want to re-establish this, right? Last week we said listening is a brain-based activity. We hear with our brain, not just our ears. When we develop a listening brain, it can support development of language and literacy skills. So typically developing children, anybody around us, even those who are blind or have cerebral palsy or autism or any other disability, if they can hear, they are developing spoken language. We know from research that when children are reading, when anybody is reading, the parts of the brain associated with listening are also actively involved in learning to read and learning through reading. So a listening brain is important for language and literacy skills. This is not to say that people who don't use listening or spoken language don't learn to read, but learning to read through listening is one way to learn reading. So if you are a parent who is thinking, yes, I want my child to go to school, I want my child to learn to talk, I want my child to learn to read, then you want your child to have a listening brain. If you are a professional who is being asked by families to help them teach their child to talk, read, be in the school, then it is your job to help the child develop a listening brain. I want to very quickly review this. Learning to listen and learning through listening has certain factors that will impact auditory skill development. I'm going to talk about what the specific stages are, what the skills are, but all of those are impacted by these factors. Age of the child. We know that brain development, the brain is most flexible, ready to learn in the first 3 to 5 years of life. So at what point the child is starting learning to listen and learning through listening matters. So age of the child is a factor. Duration of deafness, how long the child has gone without hearing. Again, this goes back to the brain. How long has the brain not heard anything or only heard bits and pieces or only heard sometimes? Access through hearing technology. Say the child does have a hearing aid or a cochlear implant, but it is, in the middle or at the bottom of the speech banana rather than at the top of it. So how much they hear with their hearing aid or cochlear implant, how well they hear with their hearing aid or cochlear implant will also matter. And duration of auditory experience or hearing age, listening age. How long have they practiced listening? I'm working with a child right now who had a postlingual sudden hearing loss, and the child has received a cochlear implant. It's been just about 6 months. Even though this was a child who had some language before losing hearing, this child seems to be going through the same process of learning to listen. 6 months out since the implant, this child is just now beginning to show some more babbling and vocal play in the child's interactions, vocalizations, because the child's hearing age with the implant is 6 months. And that matches what developmentally we would have seen, which is surprising given a postlingual hearing loss for the professionals in the group, but this is an interesting case. Expectation and need for listening. I have heard parents as well as professionals say, yeah, the child has a hearing aid, but it's not like they really need it. They can do everything without it. Yeah, we did get a cochlear implant, but the school doesn't really make them use it. There is no need to use it. So the need and the expectation to listen, listening is important. Listening has power. Understanding what is said is important. Unless we develop that for children, they are not going to be motivated to develop skills. And and we'll talk a lot more about this later, but understanding what is said, it's not just about hearing. If I suddenly change language and speak in a language that you don't know, you would be able to hear it, but not understand it because you don't know what it is. You don't know what it means. So all of these factors together impact how well a child learns to listen and learns through listening. So if you are a parent, think about your child and think about when they started listening, how long they had gone without auditory input, what they hear through the hearing technology, how long have they been hearing, and do they need to hear, when, where, how, why, and what is their language level like. Professionals think the same about the children you are seeing. Also take one more step and think about, do the parents have this information about their children? I will give you a second to write this down or make an action item for yourself. And then we will jump into the stages of auditory development, the auditory hierarchy. If there are any questions, please type in the Q&A. If there are any comments, please type in the chat. So auditory hierarchy, and this was the question we got, and I'm going to answer it now. The auditory hierarchy, as proposed by Erber, E-R-B-E-R. Oh, captioning did not get that, so I'm going to type it in chat. This comes from Erber. Is a sequence of skills. Same sequence can be followed when teaching using a developmental model or what is considered a remedial model. So the child is delayed and now we are starting. We still start from the very beginning. Achievement of milestones, like how you meet each stage and skills, depends on auditory experience. So like I said, the hearing age or listening age, as well as auditory access. And the sequence of auditory hierarchy should be followed irrespective of chronological age. I'm going to give examples about this. I'm just going to answer a question real quick. Somebody said their internet is bad. Can I watch the recording later? Yes, absolutely. We'll be sharing the recording in a few days. All right. So there are 4 major stages in the auditory hierarchy. So I'm going to talk about the skill and the behavior. The first stage is detection. I heard that. You might see a child demonstrating this behavior by looking at the sound, pointing to their ear. Maybe it's completely nonverbal. They just make big eyes, or they stop doing what they are doing, or they, a little baby who is hearing something gets excited and moves more. So it can be starting a physical movement or stopping a physical movement, doing something more or less, or actually doing an action to it. So when children go for audiological assessments and they have to listen, like hold a block, listen and put it in the bucket, what they are demonstrating is the skill of detection. I heard that. The next step is discrimination, where you hear 2 sounds and you think about, oh, those are not the same. I heard the doorbell and I heard the dog barking. Those are 2 different things. But I heard mommy calling my name and then I heard daddy calling my name. Those are the same thing. I heard the same thing 2 times. So same, different. That's discrimination. And you know what? Hold on. Let me talk about this a little more. Sometimes it's just an internal thought. These are same, these are different. Sometimes you can have children tell you whether they are the same or different. So back in the day, I have a younger sister who's deaf. So when she was learning to do this, my mother would do things like, if you hear the drum beat 3 times, 1, 2, 3, pause, 1, 2, 3, then you jump if it's the same. But if it's different, then you sit down. Later on, this became, I'm gonna say 2 words. If they are the same, jump towards me. I'm gonna say 2 words. If they are different, jump backwards. So it's like a listening game. So those are discrimination skills with sounds, environmental sounds, speech sounds, word sentences, and so on. Identification is where you figure out what the sound is, and very closely with that is comprehension. You figure out what the sound means, or what the sound is, and what it means. So this could be, oh, I heard the dog, that means the dog is barking, or very simply, somebody says, what is your name? You heard that, you heard in your head, what is your name? And now you know what that means, so you tell your name. This could be responding to question answers, following directions, auditory memory, being able to hear everything, think about it, remember it, also is part of this auditory hierarchy. Erber doesn't seem to separate it out, but it is very much a part of this process. I want to direct your attention to this slide. If you can't do these skills, then it is going to have a pretty big impact. If you can't detect sound, you will be relying on visual cues. You will not be listening very well. And there will be implications for safety and perception. If you can't discriminate, if you can't tell the difference between sounds, this has serious implications for learning to read, following conversations, spelling and spelling tests. So if you can't hear the difference between F and V, captioning can't handle this. But if you can't hear the difference between F and V, whether I have said fan or van is going to be very difficult for you to listen and make sense. Then you get it wrong on the spelling test. Then you get it wrong in your answer. And it's not because you don't know fan and van, it's because you didn't hear it. You couldn't tell the difference between them. Identification, comprehension, and auditory memory, if these skills are lacking or missing, or you can't do them, speech perception, speech production, language development, reading development, learning in the classroom, you will see a lot of reliance on visuals. Children need visuals for this. Conversations will be impacted, following directions will be impacted, and classroom learning, again, because apparently it's that important, will be impacted as well. So when you are saying, oh, my child has trouble with attending in the classroom, or I see this patient and they have difficulty following directions, start with what can they hear, what can't they hear, what do they understand through hearing only. Okay, think about this, write this down, type questions if you have them in Q&A, type comments in chat. I want to highlight the link between listening and language. Hearing, very simply, is sound goes from the ear to the brain. I heard it. Listening is when whoever is listening attends to the sound and thinks about it. Understanding is when you are connecting what is heard with the meaning, and that can only happen when you know the meaning. Overhearing or incidental learning is happening when you are hearing and understanding, even when it is not directly directed towards you. So for example, sometimes, adults are talking and they say the word cupcake or party or movie or popcorn. And the kids are like, what? Cupcake? I want cupcake. Kids weren't even there. You weren't talking to the kids. You weren't talking to the kid. But they were monitoring. They were listening to what is happening in their auditory environment and picking it up. So even though it was not like, hey, listen, cupcake. Even though it wasn't like that, even though it was mom saying to grandma, oh, let's make sure we get cupcakes for the birthday party. The child is like, what? Cupcakes for the birthday party? That means they are monitoring their auditory environment. Many children have to be taught to listen all the time. When I was a classroom teacher, we had, every day around after our reading time was our recess time. And I don't know if this is a common practice, but at least in my classroom, we had jobs for every child. And somebody got to be the line leader every day. And that was like a massive honor. Oh, I'm the line leader. It was power. I noticed that my students were relying on this and not listening for this information. So I abolished all jobs. And whoever was paying attention as we were cleaning up got to be the line leader. So I would call out names. And if they heard, if they were paying attention, they could all hear. I knew they could do this. I was not torturing them. I was moving them to the next level. If they were practicing listening all the time, your name is something you should be able to hear even when it's like noisy and so on and so forth. Then they would get to be the line leader. I had one student who hadn't yet figured it out. And he would, get a little bit mad when he did not get to be the line leader 4 days in a row. So I finally said to him, I said, why do you think you can't be the line leader? He's like, I'm not listening. I'm like, yeah, every day after reading, I'm going to call someone's name. Be listening. This was a 4-year-old kid who got the concept of, oh, I need to listen for my name. He knew what his name meant and he was able to do it. Similarly, when children have language and they learn how it sounds, they have an auditory representation for it, they can connect between listening and language and move forward. If a child does not know what something means, just hearing it is not enough. So maybe the child knows the word, let's see, what is an example? Maybe the child knows the word cup, and cup to drink something out of. But maybe they don't know the word tumbler. And I say, oh, look, there is the tumbler. And they're like, what tumbler? What does a tumbler mean? And that would be the connection between listening and language. Give me a high five if that makes sense to you. And we're going to jump into some other activities. High five. I like this, high five. Type in Q&A if you have any questions. I see a couple questions. I have seen them and I will answer them. Okay. So, how can families and professionals facilitate auditory skill development? Take a second and read this, and then I'm going to talk about it. So first and foremost, families and professionals can advocate for and implement early and consistent device usage. We want hearing aids on children full time as early as possible. Even if you are waiting for a cochlear implant, if you can get loaner hearing aids while you are waiting to get a cochlear implant, those months of listening are precious. It helps the brain learn to listen. And when you get a cochlear implant, the brain is already used to listening, and progress with a cochlear implant will be faster. Cochlear implant as soon as advised. Sometimes it is a financial issue where you cannot get a cochlear implant as quickly as possible, and that is one thing. But if there is any way to get a cochlear implant at the youngest age possible, youngest age advised by the doctor, because there has to be CT scans and MRI and physiology and anatomy and all of that to take into account. So as early as advised, the earliest possible will likely have better impact. Research shows that children who get implants before 18 months have amazing language outcomes, assuming that they are using it all the time, they are programmed really well, they're getting good intervention. Children who get implants between up to 3.5 years of age are likely to do well. Children who get implants between 3.5 to 7 years, some do well, some don't do really well. And children who get implants after 7 years of age are likely to benefit minimally from it. So you're not going to see a radical change in their language. This is assuming that they've had profound hearing loss. If they had a progressive hearing loss and they get an implant when they needed one, you will still see really good results. This research comes from Dr. Anu Sharma and colleagues. It was done in the middle of 2007, between 2005 and 2010. There were several research papers, and that continues to be what we know and understand in the field. Families and professionals can also contribute to this by checking benefit from hearing technology. Just because a kid has a hearing aid or a cochlear implant, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't check how well they are hearing. An audiologist is doing that check every so often, but I highly recommend a daily listening check with the Link 6 sound, with each ear, at a distance, the whole bit. If you would like more information about this, we will be sharing it in our handout that will go with the recordings. But a daily listening check is critical, not to shame anyone or anything like that, but how many of you who are parents are doing daily listening checks? How many of you are professionals are encouraging parents to do daily listening checks and doing daily listening checks in your practice? Give me a high five if you are doing that. Excellent. Many high fives. Very good. Next time I ask this question, I want to see all high fives. Okay. We have a question that says, if a child has already developed speech and language through hearing aids, does the age of the CI matter if the loss progresses too profound? As I said, duration of deafness matters in this case. And if the child has consistently lost hearing, getting an implant as soon as possible would be the answer. In that case, chronological age doesn't matter because the brain has the experience of listening. Another way families and professionals can facilitate auditory skill development is by making listening an important part of daily living. Think about your day. What do we do during the day where listening is important? And find opportunities for listening all day, not just during therapy or school. Listening should matter all day, every day. I think about it in this way. You know how people go to the gym, people, not me. How people go to the gym and they are like doing weights to bulk up their arm muscles, and they're lifting weights, and they're doing, whatever reps. I don't know. I've never done that. At that time, for those 20 minutes, all they are focused on are these muscles, whatever. That I think of as therapy time listening. We're going to do an auditory activity and we're going to really practice listening. But the rest of the day, I'm still moving my arms. I'm still using my arm muscles to pick up things and hold my backpack and, jump and swing from the monkey bars. That is listening throughout the day. So we are wanting to listen throughout the day. Otherwise, we go to the gym, we work our muscles, and then we come home and we just put our hands down all day long and never use them. That's not going to build strength in your arms. Similarly, that's not going to help you practice listening and use listening in daily life. Does that analogy make sense? Oh, was that a high five that I just deleted? Okay, good. So this is just an image to help us think about, why do we want children to learn to listen, learn through listening, and then go on to listen for life? Look at each of these pictures. Listening matters. And very often, it's not just listening, right? It's listening, speech, and language together. Here, a father and his son are drawing and coloring. And hopefully, the father is saying, oh, look, I see the blue ocean. Should we draw a red fish in the blue ocean? Here goes the red fish. And the child is hearing all of this because look where they are sitting. Look how they are sitting. This is how they do it. Here, the mother is saying, all right, 1 spoonful for you. Here it comes. Ah, that is happening all through listening, learning to listen. Over here, grandma and granddaughter are reading a story and hopefully learning through listening. Grandma read a funny story, the child heard it, the child understood it, and they're laughing together. Another mother and child are playing hide and seek. And the mother said, where are you? I heard some laughing. I found you. There you are behind the tree. This is daily life. Most importantly for me are these two middle pictures. When we are listening for life, it gives us an opportunity to build relationships, make connections. Here is a family sitting together, and maybe the kid is saying, and that was the most funny thing that happened in school today. You just wouldn't believe it. They are able to do this, say this, engage in a conversation because they have learned to listen, learn through listening, and are using listening for life. Similarly, in the classroom situation, the teacher is talking, the children are engaging, the children are raising their hands, listening for life. And this is why we have to work through our hierarchy of auditory development. So very quickly, here are some ideas for detection level activities. Now, I want to highlight that we are working on the auditory aspect of it when this information is presented auditory only. There are no visual cues. So going on a listening walk, you are walking and you hear all these sounds and you are looking at it and pointing them out and talking about it. That's a great detection activity. Music is wonderful for that. You can do a freeze dance where when the music stops, you freeze. Musical chairs. These are activities that are entirely auditory based. If the child can hear the presence and absence of sound, they can do this. Responding to environmental sounds. I remember I had a family long time ago who had put outside their door, "It will take us a while to answer the door. We are practicing listening to the doorbell." So every time the doorbell rang, the parents would go to the child and say, "Did you hear that? That's the doorbell. I heard it. Somebody's at the door. Let's go answer the door." So they were practicing detecting the doorbell. Responding to name. We want children to hear their name and understand it's their name, but we really want to keep it meaningful. And that's not a classic detection activity. It's not a presence, absence of sound, but that is one of the early skills we want to develop. So if you have ideas, share your ideas in the chat so that others can see it too. Make sure you go to panelists and attendees. If you are a parent who worked on this with your child, share how you did it. If you are a professional who does detection activities with children, share what your tricks and ideas are. You can also include localization activities, finding where the sound came from. Many a times children, hopefully, I mean, we have 2 ears for a reason. So hopefully children are using 2 hearing aids or 2 cochlear implants or 1 cochlear implant and 1 hearing aid, even if that hearing aid is not giving all the information. Listening with 2 ears is still important. Binaural listening. Listening to bird calls on a nature walk, excellent. That's a fantastic activity if you can do that. Looking forward to seeing some more. But also looking at the time, I'm going to move forward with this. For discrimination activities, child should notice the differences in sound or speech presented auditory only and respond. So we have a question here about how do you do discrimination with kids with limited language? You know, I would start with a very obvious action-based game, and from there move it on to words they know, sounds they know, concepts they know, and take it all the way into language. So games about long and short, fast and slow, high and low sounds, discriminating between 1, 2, and 3 syllable words, storybooks with characters and voices. You might be reading the story and then you can say, "Oh no, I am so scared." Why are you so scared? Who is talking? Who was scared? Maybe you know it's the mouse and the lion story. The mouse was really scared, and then the lion said, "Why are you scared?" "Yeah, the mouse was speaking in a really high pitch." "Oh no, I'm so scared." The lion had a deep, loud voice. "Oh, why are you scared?" Unless you are willing to be silly, it does not feel fun. I mean, look at me. I'm doing these faces on a recording that's going to live on YouTube for a long time to come. But these are the fun ways to develop auditory skills. Identification and comprehension, I see that this is one of the most frequently worked on area. So here a child is hearing the information presented auditory only and providing a response to show that the information was understood. This could be daily conversations, daily routines, storytelling, story reading, following directions. The success of these tasks depends on speech perception and language abilities. So if a child is struggling in this area, make sure that they are hearing all the sounds they need to hear. And when they hear it, They actually understand the meaning before having to do something with it. So if I said to you, go to the, so the word for cupboard in Hindi is almari. So maybe you know the word almari, maybe you don't. If I said to you, go get the red shirt from the almari, and the child says, I don't know what to do, you say, tell me what you heard. Go get the red shirt from the almari. Okay, so what will you do? Child is like, I don't know what is an almari. So even when the child might have heard it, comprehending it and acting on it is linked to language. I hope that makes sense, because that is one of the most critical aspects of auditory skill development. We have to develop the base of language as well as speech perception to be successful with auditory skills. I want to share some strategies in our handout. We will share links to more descriptions of these strategies as well as videos. And very quickly, if we can figure out how, when we speak, we are providing a clear auditory signal, making it easier for the child to hear and understand, those are the strategies. So presenting auditory information first, then followed by a visual if needed. So call the child's name first and wait. If they didn't hear you or understand you maybe, then you're going to call the child's name, make a gesture. So that's the visual. But you've tried with the auditory first, and then you're going to put it back in audition. Auditory bombardment is basically when you highlight a word, a target word over and over and over. So the child has many opportunities to hear that word over and over and over. Acoustic highlighting is when you emphasize a word so that it's easier to hear. It falls in line with the principles of infant directed speech. When we talk to babies, we are like, oh, baby, are you hungry? Let's go get some milk. It's slower, it's more sing-song, it's slightly louder. Just like that, if I said to the kid, listen, go to the almari and get the red shirt. I didn't say, hey, go to the almari and get the red shirt, please. That's a whole different way of talking if the child isn't used to it. One quick thing, we don't want to go through life talking like, get the red shirt. We want to get to a point where we say, hey, get the red shirt, please. But we might need to start with, get the red shirt, and move forward. Auditory closure is where you fill in the blank, where the child has heard something and you are asking them to fill it in. Yesterday, when we were in the park, we saw a bird. Very good. So you set it up and you had the child fill it in. Again, these are all strategies to promote listening. So you want to make sure that you are not giving all of this information visually, but actually focusing on the listening piece of things. Creating a need to listen, and when they can't, creating a space to ask for clarification is important. So let me answer this question real quick. A parent asked a child who's 7, 8, was watching a movie and asked to turn on the captions. Is that okay? Depends on what your purpose is. Was this child watching a movie for fun and the captions were helping them understand whatever they were missing, helping them develop their reading skills? Yeah, I think captions are always good. But if this was an auditory activity where you were saying, oh, I want you to focus on what they are saying and not read it, then maybe you don't want the captions on. But in general, I think captions are a good thing to help children develop their reading skills as well. Another thing that I have heard from my adult friends who got cochlear implants later in life, they talked about how they were practicing to listen through audiobooks, and words that they knew only in writing, they didn't know how to say it. They figured that out by listening to it. So I'll give you an example. I think one of the words my friend told me was, I don't remember if this was the actual word, but the word is denouement, right? So I don't even know if I can spell it correctly. I typed it in the chat, denouement. And that means, like, in a story, when there is this big action sequence at the end, and then, there is the happily ever after. The happily ever after, the coming down from a big action sequence or climax, is called a denouement. So we were talking about this, and she said, all these years, I've been calling it a denouement, but that's not how you say it. And I didn't learn that until I saw the word with the audio of it. So captions can serve a really interesting purpose, especially as children develop higher level vocabulary. If you're doing an auditory only activity, we don't want any visuals or any print cues, but this is, where go to the gym, auditory only. In life, there always are certain cues, but we are still going to rely on our auditory skills. Another question is the sing-song pattern based on chronological age or hearing age? There is interesting research on this. So typically, it has been associated with chronological age, but research conducted by Tanya Bergeson, I believe, showed that mothers of children who had received implants matched their style of talking to the child's hearing age rather than their chronological age. So it seems like this is something human beings do in response to where a child might be. There was an article in the Volta Voices of A.G. Bell that talked about using infant-directed speech for late implantees and late listeners. That's definitely a good read, and you should check it out. Okay, I'm looking at the time, and this is the last thing I want to talk to you about. There are many assessments that are available to figure out how a child is doing. The Peach and the Teach, and I will be sharing all of these links with you. These two come out of Australia. They are available in multiple languages, so be sure to check them out. These are, broad checklists. The Functional Auditory Performance Indicators checklist comes from Phonak, and it is in depth, various stages. It is available for free. Everything with a star is available for free downloads. The Auditory Learning Guide is another guide to help professionals see what stages the child is at and what the next stage needs to be. And there are multiple free guides available through CI companies. So if you are using a particular CI, talk to your rep to see what is available to you. There are a couple other more standard tests where you are giving a test to the child and the child has to respond. And those include the auditory perception test for hearing impaired, and the speech perception, instructional curriculum, and evaluation, the SPICE. These are available for sale, and I don't know if they're available worldwide, but those would be things to check out. One quick note, if you are purchasing a test, be thinking about what is the population that it was meant for. So if it is a curriculum developed for people in America speaking English with an American accent, know that some of the consonants and vowels and those kinds of things might be different. So be thinking about that for sure, okay? I feel like it's not that big a challenge in auditory assessments as much as it is in language assessments. So check it out, think about it, and make sure you have taken it into account. There are other tests that have auditory performance as a part of their subtest. So the Cottage Acquisition Scales for Listening, Language, and Speech has a listening section that is by age. The TAPS, the Test of Auditory Processing Skills, I think I'm saying that right. And then the SELF 5, the Clinical Evaluation of Language Fundamentals 5, has subtests that rely on listening alone. When we are thinking about planning intervention goals, I think these are the 5 things to take into account. What can the child hear with and without hearing technology? The sounds, the speech, words, and sentences. What is the impact of background noise? In day-to-day life, how does the child listen and understand what is said? At school, what does the child listen and understand what is said? Is the child learning through listening? And what does the child need to practice more? And those become your, this is what the child can do, this is what the child can't do as yet, and let's work on it. So planning auditory intervention does not need to be rocket science. We are here, we need to go here, this is what we need to do in the middle. These guides, these assessments, these checklists can provide you a guidance of what that next step is. And luckily, the first 3 checklists I showed can be completed by anyone, a parent or a professional. So families, feel free to take this to your professional, share this with your family and complete it together so you have a better sense of how the child is functioning. I want to bring this back. Maybe what I shared today seems like a lot to do and a lot to think about. But remember, you want to do this as a team. Families should be supported by a team of professionals. We want the pediatric audiologist, the speech language pathologist, the teacher of deaf and hard of hearing children, the special and general education teachers, the ENTs and otologists, all to work together to developing a listening brain, to develop language, to develop literacy, to develop listening for life, working together. Empowered families supported by knowledgeable and skilled professionals can transform a child's life trajectory. We know this, we see this, we believe this. So my call to action for you is find your team and reach your dream, whatever that might be for your child. I want to do a quick review of the key concepts. If there are any questions that anyone has, please type in the Q&A. If you have any comments, type them in the chat. This session is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel in a few days, maybe a week, along with the handout that you can download. If you have questions or comments or specific questions about children, if you're a parent asking about a specific child, please email Alhadani. If you are a professional seeking help with the case or something like that, please email me. You can find more information on our website. And we will be continuing this series of webinars. We won't meet again until July, at which point we will have a very exciting, world-renowned guest speaker. More details to come. Stay tuned. Before we part today, I want you to think about what action will you take to create a ripple of change. What is something you will do to help facilitate auditory skills development at the individual level, at the family or your center work level, at the community level, and in the world. Thank you all for joining today. If you found this helpful. Please share our resources. If you found this important and you want others to hear it, please connect with us so that we can figure out how to present at your organization. And if you see value in this work and would like to support it through donations, please visit Facebook or our website. If you are in India wanting to make a donation, the process is a little tricky, but email us and we can talk to you. Oh, we have one. Is there a computer automated hearing assessment? Actually, the WHO World Health Organization app does have something similar, and I would encourage you to check it out. I've been meaning to check it out and I haven't had a chance yet, but I would encourage you to check it out. When this ends, a survey will pop up, hopefully. I haven't checked it, tested it this morning. But when this ends, a survey will pop up and we would love to hear your feedback. So with that, I want to say thank you to all of you for attending today. And we will see you at a future webinar in July. All right. Bye, everyone.